Hello and welcome to the Soundtrap Education Summit, a free online event dedicated to empowering and amplifying student voice with the theme, We Make Our World. We're bringing you inspiring and practical messages from musicians, educators, podcasters, students, and more that can help you make change in your classroom right away. I'm Matt Miller, author of Ditch That Textbook and the moderator of the summit. Our sponsor and host of the summit is Soundtrap. And in today's session, you are in for a treat. I think it's safe to say that you're going to see something that you've never seen before and that you might not have been able to conceive of on your own. This is kind of like stretching the ability to do music at scale across different places around the world into one incredible project. This is kind of like an exemplar of that. And this is going to blow you away. So I'm going to stop introducing it, and I'm going to bring on Marion, who is going to tell us a little bit about this. And as you can see, we are on site with her, where you're going to learn all about this fantastic project that she and many others have pulled together. So Marion Wood, thank you so much for joining us. Can you do a quick introduction? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm trained as an orchestral conductor, but I had the second study singing, and before that my parents thought it would be a proper idea if I got a real bachelor first. So my first bachelor was joint honors in electronics and music. So I have a kind of a bit of studio background, but then I went off into the classical world and didn't look back. Then along comes lockdown, and I had this kind of little idea that I'd always had, what it would be like if you put one voice in one speaker. Okay, you'd have one voice in one speaker, not stereo, just one, because my bachelor project had something to do with how your stereo ears perceive sound, and how if you're not sitting in the perfect position, it's not great with stereo. But if one voice was one speaker, well, then if you had four speakers, would you have like a quartet? And how much like a quartet would it sound? And actually, maybe what would happen if you had 20 speakers or 40 speakers or 60 speakers, because we were in lockdown and nobody was allowed to meet. So this was kind of a long time in the back of my head. And then there was the pandemic, and then we were trying to, like everybody else, do choir rehearsals on Zoom. Oh no. And it was terrible. And we were just about to give up when somewhere I saw on somebody's blog, you should try these things. And the third one was Soundtrap. And they said, free education license for 2 months. You can try it out. So I signed us up. And then the next choir rehearsal, 40 people signed in. And after 2 hours, we all went away into Soundtrap. And after 2 hours, we all came back. And we could hear a choir sound. So 40 people recorded different tracks. And at the end of 2 hours, we had something that sounded like a choir. And everybody was crying and going, oh my goodness me, because they hadn't heard anything except their neighbor and the dog barking for however long. So that was the beginning of our Soundtrap experience, like lots of other lockdown things. But then, there's loads of students everywhere that need their credit points for playing in ensembles, because it says so in their like definition of what they have to fulfill for their degree. And there's a whole year when they can't get those credit points. We need to find a way of accrediting them for ensemble playing and ensemble singing, even though no one's allowed to meet in groups of more than two. So we made this proposal, and the International Office agreed to fund us, and the Culture Office, who were not paying for a live orchestra to accompany the choir concert, agreed to fund us. And we used Soundtrap to... No, first of all, we made a recording of a crazy backing track. So the first project was Mozart Requiem, and we kind of did this backing track recording with 6 instrumentalists and 12 singers spread out in the most enormous auditorium that we could find, not in the church, but in one of the lecture theatres that is supposed to seat like 1,200 people, and it had 20 of us in it, all spread out, with 15 meters between each person. And we made a backing track from that, and then we put that in Soundtrap, and we cloned it 10 times, and then we added 10 or 15 people to each project. And then, because that's the fantastic thing about Soundtrap, is it stays synchronized. You can clone a project and it's exactly cloned. So people can record their tracks in project 1 or project 5 or project 7, And at the end, when I download them all and send them to Mince or put them into a DAW like Reaper, then they all line up exactly as they were, as the participant lined them up. And of course, the empowering thing about Soundtrap, when you talk about empowerment, is that they can decide which takes. So normally a huge amount of studio work is just like, okay, which take is best? Which take do we like? And it's a totally different thing when the participant has control of that. They can listen to take 4 and go, well, I like that except for bar 7. I'm going to do bar 7 again. And by the time it gets to us, they've done this whole input, which means the track represents themselves in a way that we wouldn't necessarily get if we chose our favorite tracks. Mm-hmm. And that was particularly in the lockdowns, was very important. I mean, I'm the kind of director who likes to give people enough artistic freedom that they feel they contribute or they think of new ideas on the spot. But still, Soundtrap takes that a whole step further to let the person decide when they're ready, when they think it's acceptable, which takes they like the best, and which represents their musical ideas. So that's
wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, I think. So let me go back through this and make sure that I understand this right. So you had plans for a concert, then COVID. Everybody has their then COVID story, I think. There's so many of those stories. So this is one of them. Then COVID, and all of a sudden you have all of these students who have requirements where they need to practice together, but there's no easy way to do it. And Zoom was not an option. And so, right. So bad. And so it was conceived of this idea to record everything, all of the individual parts through Soundtrap. Yeah. And let me stop on that for a second, because I think that's one of the places that throughout the pandemic and through all of the remote things that were going on, this is definitely, I think, something where people use tools like Soundtrap to make their lives feel a little more like normal. And so let me ask you about that experience, first of all, just kind of as we progress our way back through the story. In that moment where you started to realize we could have all of these people in all of these disparate locations sort of like come together in one digital space, what was that like? Like that moment when you started to realize it and when it clicked and when it started to work, like, tell me about that.
Well, that was great. I mean, there's stuff going on, there's sofa singers and stay-at-home choir, and Eric Whittaker's been doing this kind of stuff forever. But what's unique about Soundtrap is that it's interactive. So with Eric Whittaker, he sends a backing track and you record your voice and then you send it to him, and that's it. It just like goes into this hole and they decide the rest. And the interactive thing where the backing track was there, but then, people started adding stuff. And so if you're a violinist, you listen to another violinist and go, okay, I could do it like that, or I'll try to follow this person, or actually, no, I think it should be kind of like this, and I'm going to use another bowing, or I'm going to phrase it so. And then the singer's, of course, the same, she sings beautifully, but she's too high on this note here. I'm going to do my recording and I'm going to try to fix what she can't do, but in some places I'm going to imitate it. But it really got super exciting when they started to interact with one another. So when the flute player was like, I could phrase my music the way the soprano is singing because she has the text and I don't. And I could listen to a violin while I'm playing my flute part, and that might change the way I play it. Or where the singer thinks, it just sounds so terrible on my own in my dry living room. But as soon as I put on the violin, my voice seems to sound better because there's a violin next to it. And how does that work? And can I do another take? And then I can write the violin, and maybe the violin will listen to my soprano part and go, hey, that's really cool. I might do another take. And have you heard the clarinet yet? And this kind of interaction, that was just the only place that we could get that in the pandemic. And to be honest, it's the only place we can still get that.
Thank you all so much for being a part of this recording, or for watching this, and for being a part of the Soundtrap EDU Summit. We'll hope to see you on another session. Take care.